Dr. Du-Young Kim stood at the large window of the Galactic Council's observation deck. Her eyes were fixed on the blue-green planet displayed on the massive screen. Earth looked peaceful from up here, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. "Another primitive species," said one of her assistants, typing notes into a tablet. "They haven't even built bases on their moon yet." Do-Young didn't respond right away. Something about this planet was different. The humans had nuclear power, but they mostly used it for electricity. They had powerful rockets, but they used them to take pictures of space. They had strong metals and advanced computers, but they spent most of their time making music and watching shows. "Look at their weapons," she said, pointing to another screen. "They're so simple." The images showed tanks, planes, and ships. Nothing like the plasma cannons or gravity bombs that other species had. The Galactic Council's exploration ship had been watching Earth for 3 months now. They stayed hidden behind the moon, using their advanced technology to study human civilization. It was standard practice before making contact with any new species. "Director Kim," called a voice from behind her. "The Council wants your report." Do-Young walked into the big meeting room. 50 alien representatives sat around a curved table, all looking at her. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few were made of living crystal. But they all shared one thing. They were worried about finding new species that might be dangerous. "Humans are fascinating," Du-Young began, showing pictures on the room's main screen. "They spend most of their resources on entertainment. They make music, movies, games, and art. Their biggest companies don't make weapons. They make phones and computers for watching videos." She showed more images. "They fight sometimes, yes, but their wars are small and limited. They have strict rules about fighting. They help their enemies after battles. They spend more money on sports than on their armies." The council members looked pleased. They had seen many violent species before, ones that tried to attack the council as soon as they got space travel. Humans seemed different. "What about their space technology?" asked one of the crystal beings. "Very basic," Du-Young answered. "They have a small space station. They send robots to nearby planets, but they haven't tried to build weapons in space. They seem more interested in taking pictures of stars than conquering them." The council members talked among themselves. Du-Young waited patiently. Finally, the head council member stood up. "We will make contact," she announced. "Earth seems ready to join the galactic community. They are peaceful enough." Do-Young nodded, but something was bothering her. In all her research, she had found many references to something humans called war crimes. But every time she tried to study this, her translation computer had trouble explaining it. Why would a peaceful species need laws about how to fight wars? "Send the invitation," the head council member ordered. "Tell them we come in peace." As Do-Young left the meeting room, she wondered if they were missing something important. The humans looked harmless, yes, but why did they have so many rules about fighting? Why did they spend so much time studying old battles? Why did they make so many movies about war? She pushed these thoughts aside. After all, the council had met hundreds of new species. They knew what they were doing, and humans seemed so peaceful, so focused on entertainment and art. What could possibly go wrong? The message was sent to Earth that day. The Galactic Council was about to learn that appearances could be very deceiving, especially when it came to humans. The Galactic Council's grand meeting hall was silent as Captain Hansol Park walked in. His polished black boots made soft sounds on the marble floor. The Marine captain wore his formal blue dress uniform, with rows of colored ribbons on his chest. Every alien in the room stared at him. Ambassador Ryan leaned forward in her floating chair. Her silver scales shimmered under the bright lights. "This is Earth's diplomatic representative," she asked, her translator making her voice sound musical. "A warrior?" "A Marine Corps captain," replied the human official next to Hansol. "Captain Park has served with distinction for 15 years. Hansol stood straight and calm. He had practiced for this moment. Earth's governments had spent weeks choosing the right person to meet the aliens. In the end, they picked him because he was both a soldier and a diplomat. Strange, said Ryan. Most species send scientists or political leaders for first meetings. She turned to her fellow council members. Perhaps they don't understand the invitation's purpose. Hansol spoke carefully. We understand perfectly, Ambassador. On Earth, military officers often serve as diplomats. We believe those who know the cost of war make the best peacekeepers. The council members whispered among themselves. Their translators couldn't keep up with all the different alien languages being spoken at once. Hansol noticed Dr. Do-Young Kim standing in the corner, watching everything with worried eyes. "Tell us, Captain," said one of the crystal beings, "how many ships are in Earth's space fleet?" "We don't have a space fleet," Hansol answered honestly. "Our ships stay in the water, not in space." This made the aliens laugh. The sound was strange. Some buzzed, others clicked, and the crystal beings made bell-like noises. They thought Earth must be very weak. "Water ships." Ryan smiled, showing silver teeth. "How quaint. And your weapons?" "We saw some primitive explosives in our study." Hansol kept his face neutral. He had been briefed about this. Let them think what they wanted. "Yes, our technology is not as advanced as yours," he said simply. Dr. Do-Young stepped forward suddenly. "Council members, I have a question." She looked at Hansol. "In my research, I found many references to war crimes. Can you explain this term?" The room got very quiet. Hansol looked at Do-Young for a long moment. "Perhaps that discussion should wait for another time," he said softly. But Ryan was curious now. "No, please explain. Why do humans need laws about warfare? Surely a peaceful species like yours has no use for such things." Hansol chose his words very carefully. "Every species must have rules," he said, "even for things they hope never to do again." The cryptic answer made Do-Young's scales pale slightly, but the other council members just nodded, missing the warning in his words. "Well," said Ryan, "we look forward to teaching humans about true peace. Your primitive weapons and water ships can be replaced with proper technology. Your warriors, like yourself, can find more useful work." Hansol bowed slightly. "We look forward to learning from you, Ambassador." He didn't mention that Earth's governments were already drawing up defense plans. He didn't tell them about the fleet of submarines hidden under Earth's oceans. He didn't explain why Marines like him trained so hard, even in peacetime. Let them think humans were harmless, he thought. Let them believe Earth's military was primitive. Sometimes the best defense was to let others underestimate you. As he left the meeting, he heard Ryan say, "Such a simple species. This will be an easy integration into the council." Hansol allowed himself a small smile. Simple wasn't the same as harmless. The aliens would learn that lesson soon enough. Dr. Jaiwan sat in front of her computer screen, her eyes growing wider with each new page he opened. The Galactic Council had given her an important job: study human entertainment and media. She had expected to find simple stories about peace and friendship. Instead, she found something very different. "Dr. Kim," she called out, "please come look at this." Do-Young walked over to Jaiwan's desk. The screen showed something called World War IO documentaries. Jaiwan played a video, and they watched in silence. "This must be entertainment," Jaiwan said finally. "Look how detailed these battle plans are. Humans surely didn't actually fight like this." Do-Young wasn't so sure anymore. She had spent more time watching Captain Park during meetings. She noticed how other humans treated him with deep respect. She saw how he watched everything with careful, trained eyes. In another part of the council building, Captain Park was having his own interesting meeting. Ambassador Ryan had invited him to explain human military ranks. "So these Marines are different from regular soldiers?" Ryan asked, sipping her blue drink. "Yes," Park answered. "Each branch of our military has different jobs, different traditions." "But why so many different types of warriors?" Ryan laughed. "Surely one kind is enough for ceremonies and parades." Park smiled politely. He didn't tell her that Earth's militaries weren't for parades. He didn't explain that each branch, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, had learned its lessons through centuries of real combat. Meanwhile, Jai-1 had found something called the Geneva Conventions. She read it carefully, then read it again. "These are real," she whispered. "These aren't stories. These are actual rules humans made about war." She turned to Du Young. "But why would they need such specific rules about treating prisoners? About what weapons they can't use? About protecting civilians?" Du Young felt a chill run down her spine. "Because," she said slowly, "they learned these rules were necessary." Back in the meeting room, Ryan was showing Park the Council's defense fleet through a large window. Huge ships floated in space, covered in advanced weapons. "Impressive, isn't it?" she said proudly. "Though I'm sure it must look frightening to someone used to simple water ships." Park nodded. "Very impressive," he agreed. He didn't mention that Earth's nations had spent centuries figuring out how to defeat bigger, stronger enemies. He didn't tell her about human military tactics like guerrilla warfare, asymmetric warfare, or submarine warfare. That evening, Jai-1 made an urgent call to the council leaders. "The humans," she said, her voice shaking. "Their entertainment isn't just entertainment. These war documentaries, these military records, they're real history." "Impossible," said one council member. "No species spends so much time studying war unless they love violence. But humans are peaceful. Look how they focus on art and music." "Maybe," Jai-1 said, "they focus on art and music because they know the alternative." In his temporary quarters, Captain Park wrote his daily report to Earth Command. He described the Council's ships, their defenses, their overconfidence. He ended the report with a quote from an old Earth military leader: "Appear weak when you are strong." The Council thought they were teaching humans about peace. They didn't understand that humans had already learned the hardest lessons about war and had the scars to prove it. The emergency alarm woke Captain Park at midnight. His communication device, given to him by the Galactic Council, was flashing red. He answered it immediately. "Captain, you need to come to the council chamber." Du Young's voice was tense. "Something has happened." When Park arrived, the chamber was already full. The council members sat in their high seats, looking down at a large hologram in the center of the room. The image showed a small human colony on a distant planet. Earth had built it just 2 months ago, after joining the Galactic Council. "The Meridians attacked an hour ago," Ambassador Ryan explained. Her silver scales had lost their shine. "We didn't think they would dare. Everyone knows that world belongs to Earth now." Park watched the hologram carefully. The Meridians, a species known for taking what they wanted, had landed 3 large ships near the human colony. They were advancing toward the settlement with about 200 soldiers. "How many humans are in the colony?" Park asked quietly. 57, Du Young answered. "Mostly scientists and their families." The council members were talking all at once. Their translators couldn't keep up, creating a confused mix of languages. Finally, Ryan raised her hand for silence. "Captain Park, please don't worry," she said in a gentle voice, like someone talking to a child. "This is just a small border dispute. The Meridians often do this. They will probably just take some resources and leave." Park's face didn't show any emotion. "And the colonists?" "The Meridians will probably move them to another planet," one of the crystal beings said. "It's their usual practice. No one gets hurt if they don't resist." Park stood very straight, his hands behind his back. "The Council is aware that these colonists are under Earth's protection." "Yes, but Earth has no space fleet," Ryan reminded him. "The Council will send a diplomatic message to the Meridians next week. I'm sure they will listen to reason." "Next week." Park's voice was still quiet, but something in it made Du Young step back. "There are human children in that colony." "The Meridians know humans are peaceful," another council member said. "They know you have no weapons in space. That's why they chose your colony." It's safer than attacking a species that might fight back. Park took out his own communication device, the human one. I need to contact Earth Command, he said. There's no need, Ryan said quickly. The Council will handle this. We have procedures for such incidents. Park looked at her for a long moment. Ambassador, he said, I don't think you understand. Those are Earth citizens. If the Meridians touch one human child, if they take one thing from that colony. He paused. Earth will respond. The Council members looked at each other, confused. But you have no ships, one said. No space weapons. What can you do? Park was already sending his message to Earth Command. The Meridians think we're harmless, he said. Just like you do. That was their first mistake. He looked up at the Council. Their second mistake was threatening our people. Surely you don't mean to fight? Ryan asked, shocked. Your primitive weapons would be useless against Meridian ships. Park didn't answer. He watched his device, waiting for Earth's response. After a few minutes it buzzed. He read the message and nodded once. The response is coming, he said simply. The Council was about to learn that humanity's peaceful nature was a choice, and the Meridians were about to learn what happened when humans were forced to make a different choice. Lieutenant Soo-Jin Lee sat in darkness aboard her submarine, 300 meters beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean. She had just received the emergency transmission from command. Her crew of 40 moved silently around her, preparing their weapons. Target coordinates confirmed, her weapons officer reported quietly. Meridian ships are in position above the colony. Soo-Jin nodded. Few people knew that Earth had launched its first space-capable missiles from submarines 6 months ago. The Galactic Council never noticed. They were too busy looking for spaceships. In the Council chamber, Captain Park stood calmly watching the hologram. The Meridian forces were almost at the colony's main building. Ambassador Ryan was still trying to contact the Meridian leaders. Just 10 more minutes, Ryan said. I'm sure they'll answer our message soon. Park checked his watch. They don't have 10 minutes, he said. Suddenly, new lights appeared on the hologram. The Council members leaned forward, confused. Multiple objects were rising from Earth's oceans, first dozens, then hundreds. What are those? Du Young asked, her voice barely a whisper. Park didn't answer. He watched as the missiles cleared Earth's atmosphere. They had been specially designed after Earth learned about alien shield technology. Each missile carried 30 smaller warheads that would split apart in space. On her submarine, Soo-Jin gave the final command. All units, execute Operation Lighthouse. The Meridian ships detected the incoming objects too late. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons and large projectiles. They weren't prepared for thousands of small warheads approaching from multiple directions. In the Council chamber, everyone watched in silence as the first explosions lit up the hologram. The Meridian ship's shields flickered and failed. Their soldiers stopped advancing toward the colony. Impossible, one Council member whispered. Earth has no space fleet. We don't need one, Park said quietly. Humanity learned long ago that you don't need to be stronger than your enemy. You just need to be smarter. A hologram showed more lights rising from Earth's other oceans. Soo-Jin's attack was just the first wave. 3 more submarine groups were launching their missiles. Stop this. Ryan stood up. This is not how civilized species behave. Park turned to her. You're right. Civilized species don't attack peaceful colonies. They don't threaten children. The Meridians made their choice. Now they face the consequences. The Meridian forces were retreating in chaos. Their ships, damaged but not destroyed, were turning away from the colony. The message was clear. Earth could have destroyed them completely, but chose not to. In her submarine, Soo-Jin received the confirmation. All targets retreating. Colony is secure. She allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had just reminded the galaxy of something important. Being peaceful wasn't the same as being helpless. Back in the Council chamber, Du Young looked at Park with new understanding. This is why humans have rules about war, she said. Not because you're weak, but because we know exactly how strong we can be, Park finished, and we choose to put limits on that strength. The council members sat in stunned silence. They had thought humans were simple and harmless. Now they realized the truth. Humans had simply learned to hide their fangs behind a peaceful smile. The Meridians would survive to tell others what they had learned today. And soon, the entire galaxy would know. Threatening humans or their children was a mistake no one should make twice. The emergency council meeting began at dawn. Every member was present, their faces showing worry and confusion. Captain Park stood in the center of the chamber, facing their questions. "You must explain this," Ambassador Ryan said. Her voice had lost its usual gentle tone. "How did a peaceful species hide such weapons? Why do you have them at all?" Park looked around the room slowly. He saw Du Young and Jaewon standing near the back, their research tablets ready to record everything. "You asked me before about war crimes," Park began. "Now I will tell you why humans have such specific rules about warfare." He pressed a button on his device. The chamber's hologram showed scenes from Earth's history. "Humans have fought wars for thousands of years," he explained. "At first we fought with simple weapons, spears, swords, bows. Then we made better weapons, guns, cannons, bombs." The council watched in silence as the images changed. "But something happened," Park continued. "Our weapons became too powerful. We could destroy entire cities, kill millions of people, poison the earth itself." He showed them pictures of old wars. The council members turned away from some images, but Park kept speaking. "We didn't create rules about war because we were peaceful," he said. "We created them because we saw what we could become without rules. We learned these lessons through blood and pain." Ambassador Ryan spoke softly. "But you seem so gentle now. Your art, your music, your focus on entertainment." "That's exactly the point," Park said. "We focus on building beautiful things because we know how easily we can destroy them. We make art because we've seen too much ugliness. We value peace because we understand war." Do Young stepped forward. "The missiles today," she said. "You could have destroyed those ships completely. But you didn't." Park nodded. "That was a warning shot. Precise. Controlled. Designed to stop the attack while minimizing deaths." He paused. "That's another thing we learned. Sometimes the best victory is the one where you don't have to destroy your enemy." "These war crimes you mentioned," one of the crystal beings asked. "They are things you won't do in war. They are things we can do, but choose not to," Park corrected. "Things like killing prisoners, torturing enemies, using weapons that cause unnecessary suffering. We don't avoid these things because we're weak. We avoid them because we're strong enough to win without them." The council chamber was very quiet. The aliens were beginning to understand something important about humans. "When we sent that first message to Earth," Ryan said slowly, "we thought we were reaching out to a simple, peaceful species, one that needed our protection. Instead," Park said, "you found a species that has spent thousands of years learning how to balance strength with mercy, how to fight without losing our humanity, how to win without becoming monsters." He showed one final image. The human colony, safe and undamaged. "We want peace," he said. "We choose peace. But if someone threatens our people, if they force us to fight." He let the sentence hang in the air. The council members looked at each other. They had thought humans were harmless because they didn't understand war. Now they realized humans were peaceful precisely because they understood it too well. Council historian Ta-hyun walked through endless rows of glowing data crystals in the archive room. After the incident with the Meridians, the council had ordered a complete review of all information about human warfare. As the head historian, Ta-hyun had to present his findings to the council. The chamber was unusually quiet when he entered. Captain Park sat in the front row, watching calmly. Ambassador Ryan looked tense, her scales slightly pale. Honorable Council, Ta Hyun began. What I found in human military history has changed everything we thought we knew about them. He activated the hologram system. Images filled the air around them. Humans have fought more wars in their history than any species we have ever encountered, he said. But that's not what makes them unique. It's how they fight, and how they learn from each fighting style. The hologram showed ancient battles. When humans fought with swords, they created dozens of different fighting techniques. When they made guns, they invented hundreds of ways to use them. When they built ships, they mastered fighting above and below the water. Do-young watched from her seat, taking notes. She noticed how Captain Park nodded slightly at each example. But here is what's truly remarkable, Ta Hyun continued. Humans adapt faster than any species we know. When someone invents a new weapon, humans quickly find 10 ways to defeat it. When someone builds a strong defense, humans find ways around it. He showed scenes from different human wars. Look at this pattern. In their Second World War, huge armies fought each other directly. But in later conflicts, small groups of soldiers learned to defeat much larger forces. They call it asymmetric warfare. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the simple species they thought they knew. Their submarines, Ta Hyun explained, are a perfect example. Humans realized they couldn't match the Galactic Council's space fleet, so they didn't try. Instead, they modified their underwater weapons to work in space. They turned their weakness into strength. Ambassador Ryan spoke up, but their technology is still primitive compared to ours. Yes, Ta Hyun agreed, but humans have won wars against superior technology before. They use simple solutions to solve complex problems. They think differently than we do. He showed more recent images. Humans spend more time studying their past wars than any other activity. They build memorials to remember battles. They teach military history to their children, not because they love war, but because they want to remember its cost. Captain Park stood up. "May I add something?" he asked. Ta Hyun nodded, and Park addressed the council. Everything the historian said is true, but he missed one important point. All this knowledge, all this power, we could have used it to build an empire. Instead, we chose to build art museums. We chose to make music. We chose to explore space peacefully. Until someone threatens your people, Do-young added quietly. Yes, Park agreed. Until then. The council chamber was silent as everyone absorbed this information. They had invited humans into the galactic community thinking they were adopting a younger, weaker species. Now they realized they had invited in an ancient warrior culture that had consciously chosen peace, but hadn't forgotten how to fight. 1 month after the Meridian incident, the Galactic Council looked very different. Military experts now sat alongside the diplomats. Ambassador Ryan had requested Captain Park's help to create new defense protocols. The Council had finally understood that true peace required both wisdom and strength. The Meridians have withdrawn from 3 other contested worlds, Ryan reported during the morning meeting. Her silver scales had regained their shine. They no longer believe that peaceful species are easy targets. Captain Park sat at the main table now, no longer standing before the council as a guest. Other human military advisors had joined him, each bringing centuries of Earth's combat experience to share with the galaxy. Lieutenant Su Jin's submarine fleet has trained 6 other species in underwater warfare, Park added. It turns out many worlds have oceans we can use for defense. Do-young and Jaewon presented their latest research to the council. Their task had changed from studying human entertainment to understanding human military history. The council members listened carefully now, no longer dismissing Earth's experience as primitive. We found something interesting, Do-young said, showing a new hologram. Humans don't just study how to win wars. They study how to prevent them. They learn from both their victories and their mistakes. Ambassador Ryan stood to address the chamber. When we first met humans, we thought they needed our protection. We thought their peaceful nature was a sign of weakness. She paused, looking at Park. We were wrong twice. They didn't need our protection, and their peaceful nature came from strength, not weakness. Tai-hyun added his own report. 3 more species have asked to learn about human war crimes laws. They want to create similar rules for their own military forces. They see now that having rules about warfare makes you stronger, not weaker. The chamber's main screen showed the human colony that the Meridians had attacked. It had grown larger now, but alongside the science buildings and homes, it had a new addition, a military base. Not hidden, not disguised, but standing openly as both a warning and a promise. The galaxy is changing, Ryan said. For centuries, we thought peace meant the absence of strength. Humans taught us that real peace comes from having strength and choosing when not to use it. Captain Park looked around the chamber at the faces of so many different species. Some had scales, others had fur, some were made of crystal. But they all shared a new understanding now. Earth will honor its commitments to peace, he said. We will share our art, our music, our science. We will help explore the stars and build new worlds. He stood straight and proud in his uniform. But we will also stand ready to defend those who cannot defend themselves. That is the human way. The council members nodded in agreement. They had invited humans into their galaxy thinking they were adopting a child species that needed guidance. Instead, they had found teachers who could show them a better way to keep the peace. Outside the council chamber, Earth's submarines still patrolled the oceans, ready to protect human colonies. But now they also trained other species, sharing the lessons humanity had learned through centuries of warfare. The galaxy had become a more peaceful place, not because its species had grown weaker, but because they had learned when to be strong.